Let's see what you make of this, should you, if you fancy a bit of a giggle tonight, because comedian Adam Rowe has taken top prize for the funniest gag at the Edinburgh Fringe with this. Working at a job centre has got to be a tense job, knowing that if you get fired, you've still got to come in the next day. Go on then, what do you think? What do you think of that one?
It's
Little Franken here, I should point out.
I think this is the second coming of Jonathan Swift. I think if Voltaire had not been so critical of religion, he would be looking down from heaven and saying, "Well done, lad." No, I think it's a very functional joke.
It's good. I mean, it's good because we can relate to it. It takes a little bit of thought, a tiny bit of thought at the end.
There's a little bit of thought. To be honest with you, there was one that got third place. Do you know I took out a loan to get an exorcism, but then if I don't pay it back, I get repossessed. Because that's a bit more surreal. Yeah, and I happen to like the surrealist aspects of, especially British comedy, once upon a time.
I see, that's interesting. You mentioned the idea of British comedy, and I mean, we all know about sort of comedy genres and what have you. But is there a British comedy as you see it?
There was once upon a time, and I hope it discovers it again. Because I'm here because as a young kid growing up in Missouri, I was really drawn to British. I found the Americans to be too linear, too one-liner. And there was something very weird happening in Britain with Python and Peter Cook, and especially with Chris Morris. And there was a satirical edge to it, a very surrealist edge that I think Americans wouldn't necessarily go for at the time.
Yeah.
And I think what's happened, I kind of call the Oprah Winfreyization of comedy. That it's like a little self-deprecation. Here's some stuff about me, whereas I like really biting satire.
Right.
Yeah.
So you're not a fan, because I know a lot, bizarrely, there's things like "Are You Being Served" is quite popular in some parts of the States, isn't it? And I mean, that's very British. It's a bit bawdy.
My father did not understand British comedy, but he loved Benny Hill.
Right.
And so there was, it wasn't all, not everybody was doing Python, and I get that, and sometimes we place, nations on a pedestal when it comes to their comedic traditions, but, Britain really was in touch with its surrealism once upon a time, and I think, unfortunately, there's like a kind of a business plan that a lot of comedians go through now. It's like, is it a functional one-liner? Is this going to get, am I going to tick the box? Am I going to not be offensive, per se?
It's got to evolve, though, hasn't it? I mean, I quite like surrealist comedy. I mean, I know it's good, it's clever, but it has to evolve. The sort of comedy scene and comedy circuit has to change, doesn't it?
Evolve or devolve is the question.
Oh, right.
So are we aspiring towards something really... Are we trying to elevate the discourse? Are we trying to...
Do you have to elevate the discourse, or can it be... Because I'll tell you who I really like, Peter Kay.
Yeah.
Peter Kay, because he's a northerner like me, and he's referring to stuff that we can all relate to.
It's a character as well, and I often think how a person says something is funnier than what they say. I mean, It's funny, I was actually talking to some friends. I live in the East End of London, and there's a guy who used to work for the Tony Hancock.
Oh, wow.
He was president of the Tony Hancock fan club, and every time I see him, he doesn't even say hello. He just launches right into a joke, and they're always off color. They're always inappropriate. And there's something about his voice. When he comes up to me, he says, "Did I tell you?" And I won't repeat the joke he said today, but when he said, "Well, I'll tell you." And it was everything. It's not just the joke. It's the inappropriateness of it. It's the element of shock that comes out. So I don't think that everything has to elevate the discourse. It's a bit snobbish to suggest that, and I apologize. But there's almost two approaches to comedy, and for me, it's an art form. It's like a calling. And I think somebody like Peter Cook, for example, a hero of mine, I think he was called. It was almost like a divinely ordained that this man had to do what he did.
Yeah.
And I think for a lot of people now, it's, I'm going to get into comedy. I can do comedy.
Yeah.
I mean, once upon a time, I could leave this studio and tell somebody I was a comedian, and they'd go, "Oh my gosh, a comedian, wow." But now, the odds of me bumping into somebody, "I got on stage, did 5 minutes, yeah, it was all right."
Yeah.
Everybody's doing it.
I tell you what, I wouldn't fancy doing it, the whole stand-up thing.
I could not be an anchor. That would terrify me, because I would want to be silly about it, and you have to be very...
You do. We've got some serious stuff coming up. Well, really good to see you.
You too.
Thank you very much indeed. Loving the T-shirt.
Thank you very much.
It's very appropriate.
Absolutely.
OK, stay with us here on Sky News Tonight.